final aspect of human behavior is movement, or our motor output systems, or MO systems. Movement is very interesting because it's the only brain system that lets us know what someone's internal experiences are. Only through a process of movement will I ever know how you're feeling or thinking. Even my speaking right now, it's nothing more than a process of movement. My sensory systems and my regulatory systems are communicating, and then my movement centers push air out of my lungs, vibrate my vocal cords, my mouth moves, and I send airwaves your direction, which you then process in your brain. And now you have an idea of what I am thinking. The movement centers are distributed in various locations, but they're primarily on this strip right here on the top of the brain, and they're very much supported by the regulatory structures down below and in the middle. So movement is kind of the outcome of what's happening in the sensory and regulatory systems. Now, movement is very, very interesting because movement is the only access we have to another person's experiences, as I just said. My speaking is nothing more than a process of movement. And the reason why I say this is interesting is the majority of individuals I work with use movement to fool people. So what do I mean? I'm definitely not saying anything negative about anyone I've worked with. I have the opportunity to work with amazing kids and amazing families, period. But they fool me. Here's how they fool me. We can manipulate our movement or our wheels or our outflow of behavior to fool people. Let me give you an example. If I were to ask you right now, what do you think of this video? Is it interesting? Is it meaningful? Are you getting something from it? What I've done is through a process of movement, I've asked you a question. I've sent airwaves your direction. Your brain processes those airwaves, and your sensory system activates and says, okay, based on those airwaves, I was just asked a question. The question is, what do you think? So now your regulator communicates with your sensory system, and there's some options here. You start thinking. So your regulator also says, well, there's some thoughts I'm having here, but I should actually provide the socially appropriate response. There's a little social file there. So even though I'm thinking something else, I'm going to pull my response out of the social file. And so you might respond with, wow, Dr. John, this is really interesting. You're doing a great job. You're presenting this in ways that we all understand. And great job, buddy. But you could very well be thinking, oh my goodness, what is he talking about? He's repeated himself 100 times. I have no idea what's happening here. This is a total waste of my time. You literally could be thinking that, but you just told me through a movement process, you're loving this. Dr. John, you're crushing it. So I think my interpretation of your experience, this is awesome. I'm crushing this thing, but you're actually thinking something very different. And the kids that I work with do this constantly. So what do I mean when I say the kids I work with oftentimes fool me? What I mean by that is the individuals I work with have hearts of gold. They want to do well. They want to be successful and cooperate and do what they need to do to get through the evaluation. They establish that very quickly. And since I'm looking at their behavior through a brain lens, I can see that. I can see that in their demeanor, in their interactions with me. So I can establish that their intentions are good. Their heart is solid gold. They desire success. They want to perform well. So we've established that. We've ruled out character. But what I will also then begin to see is patterns of dysregulation, where maybe as the evaluation progresses, Jane becomes more and more active. I see Jane trying to get more and more sensory inputs. Maybe Jane starts rubbing the corners of the desk, or maybe she starts, we put out sensory items, maybe she starts playing with those. And you can see her seeking sensory inputs that will help her to regulate her brain. So what I mean by that is individuals with overactive sensory systems, which is remarkably common, will show you behaviors intended to regulate what's happening in those sensory systems. Sensory seeking behaviors. It happens all the time, which is why when we're working with kids, we have an array, when we're working with anyone, adults too, we have an array of sensory items to manipulate. I also don't require that the individuals I work with sit the entire time. If they want to stand, on their head, as long as we're getting through what we need to get through and I'm getting the responses I need, I don't care how it's done, because I want them to do what they need to do to get through the testing so I get the best data possible. And it also gives me very valuable qualitative information, observational information, because those who are seeking sensory inputs the entire time are engaging in a behavior. Let me start that again. Because individuals that are seeking sensory inputs constantly, those are behaviors intended to regulate their sensory systems, meaning their sensory systems are too active. Overactive sensory systems, we're going to find, are the starting point for most of the diagnoses we're familiar with, and I'll get into that in a moment. So to summarize, the brain, as complex it is, really has three things it has to do and three areas responsible for doing that. We have to process, integrate, and store sensory information. Something's got to regulate the processing, integration, and storage of that information. And then we move. So we've got sensory systems, or our engine, regulatory systems, our driver, motor output systems, or our wheels. That's human behavior, that's human experience. And once we can unpack what's happening in the brain, if those behaviors or experiences are such where we want to change them or help an individual, we've got to understand what in that brain is causing those experiences or behaviors. And this is why a diagnostic system that uses behaviors to arrive at a word and then treat based on those behaviors fails too many. It results in diagnoses that are inaccurate or in conflict, and it results in interventions or treatments that oftentimes aren't effective. The reason isn't because the people are defective, but it's because the system is defective. It doesn't look at the source. It takes the symptoms and goes to an intervention. So if you have a sore throat and I give you a lozenge and it's strep, I haven't really done anything productive for you. I haven't fundamentally changed your experience. Until we get away from this system and start thinking about new ways to conceptualize the human experience and behavior, we are doomed to continue to repeat this. And this is what understanding exceptional is about. Looking at this system critically, figuring out what works within it and what doesn't, and figuring out new methods to understand and improve the human experience for all of us. Because at the end of the day, with effort, we deserve success. Every human should have the opportunity when they put forth the effort to be happy, healthy, and successful. That should be a part of the human experience. And these systems are preventing that for many right now. So they need to change.